Hello and welcome back to Bookish. Today I wanted to do a really quick review of Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. So to begin with, if you don't know, Kazuo Ishiguro is the winner of the Nobel Prize. He's the author of Pale View of Hills, maybe most famously the author of Remains of the Day, and he is, in my personal opinion, he is an excellent stylist. I think that his books are, you know, atmospheric and beautiful and really well executed. I went into reading Never Let Me Go with a lot of optimism and hope that this would be another one of those books that I really enjoyed that he had written. So the book essentially revolves around three friends who meet at a boarding school. Tommy, Kathy, Catherine, and Ruth. As you can tell probably right away from the fact that there are three characters, two of one sex, one of another, that there is a kind of a love triangle. What that love triangle is revealed really, really slowly. So a lot of the book is told in a flashback. It's told from Kathy's perspective. She's the character telling the story, and she is about 12 years removed from that kind of boarding school experience and from kind of her youthful contact with Tommy and Ruth when she tells the story. The story is set in what I would call an alternative sort of dystopian present. Setting the book is clearly more or less modern times, or maybe modern times somewhere around the late 80s, early 90s. It's set in England. There are recognizable English place names in the book. It's clearly not set in a different world than we live in because there are recognizable names of music and songs and things like that. Anyway, it is, the best I could explain to you is that it is a somewhat dystopian alternative present. That's where the book is set. The novel is told in three parts. One part where Kathy is looking back directly at that boarding school experience and her experiences with Ruth and Tommy, and her experience with kind of the weird world of the boarding school that she attends. By the way, that boarding school is not a typical boarding school, and it's clear there's something special about the students at that boarding school, something special about all of them, not just Tommy, Kathy, and Ruth. So she's looking back on those events and on her friendships with those two people and her experience at that school, and kind of beginning to not only figure out the dynamics after the fact of her relationship with Tommy and Ruth, but also some of the thinking back on some of the events, some of the kind of strange events in that boarding school for very special young people she attended that will, you know, be important to understanding or the plot development moving forward. The second part of the book is really set when those three characters leave their boarding school for special students, and they go to sort of a halfway house where they complete their training for what's going to be their future, which is a big part of the plot of the novel, them kind of preparing in both boarding school and this halfway house for their future. And then the third part is the part that's kind of set 12 years removed from that kind of a boarding school, halfway house, training house kind of relationship, or kind of an environment they have, where Kathy, Tommy, and Ruth meet up again, and we learn some truths about them. Kathy learned some things that she didn't know about Ruth and her relationship with Tommy, and then kind of the tragedy that ends up being at the heart of the story is revealed in that third part as well. So let me see if I can go back through this again really quickly and make sense of everything I said. Three students, Kathy, Tommy, and Ruth, all attend a boarding school for very special students where they're trained and prepared for a very specific future. They leave that school and go to what seems almost like a halfway house, halfway between school and the world they're going to occupy, where they finish their training, and then in part three of the story, the truth about what that training, what they've been preparing for, is revealed, and the truth about the relationship between the three main characters is also revealed. That's probably a better synopsis than I gave in the beginning. that's the story more or less, without giving away, what makes the characters special, or without giving away necessarily what their future is supposed to be. I think that Ishiguro is a great writer. I think he's a great stylist. This alternative dystopian present that he places his novel in is perfectly created. His writing is beautiful. His sentences seem to be completely natural. And if you didn't know that all writers really work on writing their sentences and choosing their words and placing those sentences carefully together in paragraphs, you would assume that Ishiguro just did this naturally. That's how it feels. That's kind of how beautiful his writing is. Having said all that, and having acknowledged that Ishiguro is a masterful and great writer, I have to be honest with you, I don't like this book, or I didn't like this book very much. To me, the pacing was really slow, and information was teased out almost torturously, and I felt like I arrived at conclusions 20, 25, 30 pages before the main character did, before Kathy did. And that kind of made the book feel like, I was constantly just being led along until there was one more big plot point, and then I would read really quickly for another 5 or 10 pages, kind of figure out what was going on, and then it would drag out again for another period of time. In addition to that, I don't really care for the setting. I hate to sound like a grumpy old man, but I don't have a lot of patience for hey, these characters are all at school, the typical school things happen, crushes and bullying and hurt feelings and deceitful friends and I just find that all so tiresome. And to be honest with you, in my personal opinion, there's a lot of that in the book. Which brings me then back to my problem with the plot, or a problem I have with the plot. Near the end of the book, the three characters get together, they have shared epiphanies, they have shared experiences, they express their regrets to one another. Characters who, the reader knows belong together early on in the book don't realize it themselves till later, and when they do, it's too late. I don't know, it kind of had a remain to the day feeling to it about it for me, and so I really felt like that was kind of a played plot point for Ishiguro. In addition to that, when you get to the end of the book, there's a cautionary statement about the dangers of not thinking through scientific discovery and scientific advancements, and then getting caught up in a situation where there's something really unfortunate happening, but you can't go back because of the advances science has made, and it just felt a little bit tacked on. Either that felt tacked on, or it felt like the whole story was created so Ishiguro could make that statement about science and the dangers of scientific advances, without enough thought being put into what the consequences were going to be. For me, this is a good book, or this is an okay book. I just didn't care for the book, and I realize that's puts me at odds perhaps with the Nobel Committee, and that's fine with me. But I would still give it, call it okay, because Ishiguro is to me such a good writer, and he's such a good stylist that there's pleasure in reading the book for to me, the talent of the writer, even if I didn't particularly enjoy the story. Anyway, there's my review of Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Please let me know what you think of my review, or let me know what you thought of the book in the comments section, and thank you for watching.